This is Marty Wilson speaking. It's May 20th, 2022, and I'm sitting at the Monroe County Historical Association. Amy's with me and Tanya's here, and we're talking today with Eric Hoffman, and his wife Lisa's also in the room with us. So Eric, I guess we're going to be talking mostly about the fire department in the West End, but let's hear a little bit about you. Where and when were you born, and who were your parents?
I was born January 8th, 1969. My parents were Lee and Barbara Hoffman. My grandparents on Dad's side were Henry and Mary Hoffman. We run the Hoffman Insurance Agency, and we have so for 90 years. So we're the second oldest business in Chestnuthill Township. Kresge's Funeral Home, of course, is the first. So, and on my, like I said, on my grandmother's side, we go back to, we're related to the Altamoses. We go back to Charlotta Altamose. She was an Indian girl and the missionary in Gilbert. Okay. And she married an Altamose. We do have some of her papers where she made her X. She couldn't write, but we have some that she made her mark. And
year roughly, do you know?
I do not know. But then her child was my great grandmother, Grace, who was Altamose, but she married Kretzing. So, and he was the pastor of the Lutheran church there for many years in Broadsville. So, and my grandfather, the Hoffmans came from outside of Mount Cobb, well, actually in Mount Cobb, Pennsylvania. And he came down to teach in the Chestnuthill Township School District. So what happened there was, because he could speak German, and then my grandmother was also a teacher, but they both couldn't teach in the district. So she retired and he did it, and then in the summer, that's when he went in the insurance business. And
so they couldn't teach in the district because
they
it was
could not
against
teach
the rules for family members.
Because it would make too much money.
No kidding.
So they could not both teach in the school district. So he taught biology for years in the school, and he started the insurance business in the summer, and that went on, and then finally, when he retired, he went in that full time. My dad came in, and me and my sister came in, and that's him. That's how it started. So
for 90 years.
90 years, the same as the fire department. So.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. So you grew up in the West End.
So I've lived in the West End all my life.
What schools did you go to?
I went to Chestnuthill Elementary, and then of course John C. Mills was built, and then the high school, so Pleasant Valley High School. So. And
what did you do after high school?
After high school, I actually went for. I had went to Votech and to be a machinist, and I went to Williamsport Area Community College, which is now Penn Tech. It wasn't back then, and I ended up in the insurance business for the last 30-some years. So.
And you got involved with the fire department. Well, it sounds like your dad was involved before.
My grandfather was involved. Grandfather was, he was one of the charter members of the fire department, and my dad was involved, and my uncle and a cousin. So we've had a history in the fire department.
So what is the history of the fire department?
So the history of the fire department, and I'll tell a little story that Grandpa told before, and I can't tell you whose house it was in Broadsville. But what happened was one night during the winter, they went and, of course, emptied the wood stove and put the ashes in the bucket and threw the bucket out. And what happened, of course, was the ashes blew back. It was blustery, so it blew under the porch and caught the siding on fire. Well, they found that the house was burning. So the house, I'm sure, was, we call them even today, a plank house, double planked outside with siding on. And the only way to get those out is you got to take the siding off or the planks off, even today. So, but he didn't want to do that. So it became more of a recovery effort as they tried to get the stuff out of the house. And it got dark, and then from what we understand, the owner was a prolific winemaker. So all of a sudden through the dark, somebody would go, "Psst, did you taste the elderberry wine?" And the bottle would be handed out. Well, this kept going on and on. And they found a cask and they were bringing it out up the cellar steps, and the owner says, "Oh, thank goodness, that's my best vinegar," which they promptly dropped it and let it smash on the cellar steps and went back to find something else. So, but this was all before the fire department, and that's basically how they handled it back
That is,
then.
neighbors would just
Show up and help as best they could. So, October 14th, 1931, they held a meeting in Altamose Hall. Altamose Hall was on the second story of the former R.W. Altamose and Sons store. In the two-story part, the original part of the store, there was a hall up there. I did get to see it before
Is this building still there?
No, they raised the store. The store's been raised, so I did get to go up and see it before the store was it was raised, and there was everything. There was a meeting room and a little kitchen up there. And then 17 members of the community came. They each paid $1, which, we're in a depression, so that was still a lot of money. And they appointed the officers and charged them to get a charter. That was their first order of business. And then, from then on, the meetings were held at the former Fairview Academy building. Now, the Fairview Academy building was sat in Broadsville, where the current CVS is in Broadsville, right at 115 and 209 there. That's where the Fairview Academy building was. And this will say why we're West End. So the original thing of the fire company is it would be based in Chestnuthill Township, and the station would be in Chestnuthill Township, but it was meant to serve both Polk and Chestnuthill, of course, and would help with Ross and Elbert as if they received calls, which is why we're West End Fire Company, because we serve the West End. We didn't just serve Chestnuthill. And of course, as the other townships started their own fire departments, they all went that way. So they're all, Polk is Polk, and Elbert is Coupletown, and Ross Township's part of Blue Ridge Hook and Ladder, which they're older than us, but they were formed in 1907 as part from the brickworks. So that's where they come from. But so they did that. They did get the charter, and there were 75 original charter members that started the company. So at that time, we were, of course, a fire department. They were only a fire department in name only, because no apparatus or anything. So they went about raising money. Was the first part. The first things they did, they had square dances and shooting matches. The early records show they had minstrel shows, a masquerade ball, card parties, a men's suit club, a tag day solicitation, things like that, all to raise money to buy a fire truck. And they went to the Buffalo Fire Appliance Company of Buffalo, New York. Buffalo had started out as the Buffalo Fire Extinguisher Company, and they made fire extinguishers first of all, and then went into making things like nozzles and things like that, and then finally ended up making fire apparatus, first on commercial chassis, and by the time we got ours, the Buffalo actually made the chassis and stuff. So they placed an order for a fire engine for the cost of $4,950 back in 1932, which was a lot of money, and made a down payment and took a note out for the rest. So the official date that we see the fire company was formed was February 11th, 1932, because that's when the Buffalo arrived. So our best guess, of course, is that it was, being Buffalo, was on the DMW, that the Buffalo was loaded there in Buffalo and brought down to East Stroudsburg with someone from the company, and they drove it from East Stroudsburg, unloaded it, and drove it to Broadsville. The first citizen we know who drove it was, who rode on it was a young Claude Rodenbach. Now, the Rodenbachs own the Dodge dealership there in Broadsville now. It's Pleasant Valley Motors, but and they came down. The Buffalo came down what's 209 now, which I don't know if they referred to it. I don't think it was then. It was probably still referred to as the Easton Wilkes-Barre Turnpike, because that's portion of 209 was part of that. And stopped there right around the present Wawa. He was there, and the driver asked him where the firehouse was, so he jumped on and showed him where it was. So the old firehouse, which he would have really known where it was the former Rodenbach Plumbing and Tinsmith shop. Now the building was raised in 1987. It's right, if you drive through Broadsville today and you go by, if you know where Dr. Snyder, the chiropractor's office is, it's on the left-hand side as you go up 209, you'll see concrete ramp and stuff in the weeds. There's trees and stuff growing out of it now. That's where the old firehouse sat. So that's where the Buffalo found its birth for the first years of its existence. We do have some questions. We do know that they did look at, from stuff in the fire company's files, we knew they looked at other manufacturers, Aaron's Fox, which was a big manufacturer back then, Maxim. Question we don't know is why they did look at Mack trucks. Mack was in the valley then, making fire trucks in Allentown, and also Hahn Motors in Hamburg, Pennsylvania was making fire trucks back then. We kind of think the Buffalo was a stock unit. It was something you could order, right from the company direct. And
that truck's not still around, is it?
The truck is still around, yes. Okay. We still have the Buffalo. What they took delivery of was an early model 1932 Buffalo. If you ask what it is, it's an engine, but in fire company terms, it's called a triple combination.
What does that mean?
A triple combination is, it combined three things. It combined the pumper, it combined the hose cart, and it combined the water cart all into one thing. So even today, when we buy a fire truck, it comes through, it says on the paperwork, it's a blank, the last one we bought is 2016, a 2016 Pierce Arrow triple combination. And things like, it goes from there. Now, if your triple combination has a full complement of ground ladders, it's now a quad. If you put an aerial device on it, it's a quint. Our aerial device is a quint because it has a pump, a water tank, a full complement of ground ladders, a hose bed, and an aerial device. So that's where that'll come from. We know it's an early model 32 Buffalo because of the hood. The hood has individual louvers on the hood. Later in 32, they went to 5 individual louvers with that were thermostatically controlled to open and close when the heat was on. It has, you could get different motors. It has a Waukesha engine in it. It has a Waukesha Model 6 SRS. It's a 6-cylinder engine. It's dual ignition. It has both a distributor cap and a magneto.
Does it still run?
It still runs. It still pumps.
What do you do with it?
Parade duty and funeral duty, right, is what it does right now.
Yeah.
Same thing, redundancy. It has it has a electric start and also has a crank, and you really need to eat your Wheaties if you're going to try to crank it, because the pistons are about the size of coffee cans. It's got a big motor. 4-speed unsynchronized manual transmission.
Chain drive?
No, it's regular with a drive shaft. It has a 300 GPM positive displacement pump. The fire trucks of today all use centrifugal pumps, which means there's an impeller. Well, this uses intermeshing gears. Basically, you take, when you want to pump with it, and I've pumped with it, you take the pump and there's an oil reservoir, and you fill the pump full of oil, and you put the truck in gear, and you open up the whatever outlet you're going to use with the hose on, and you put the truck in gear and then tell them to hold on, because it picks a draft right up. It drafts very fast for its age, but it doesn't have, you can't get as much pressure out of it like the new trucks because of that. So the only thing they did extra special was they ordered a extra water tank on it. So instead of 100 gallons, it carries 200 gallons.
But 200 gallons isn't much, is it?
It's nothing.
It's nothing.
It's nothing. Well, unless you use it properly. So the first call it went to, and I don't have the date, is there was a feed mill behind Dinstall's store. Now, Dinstall's store was on Route 115, which of course back then was the Easton Wilkes-Barre Turnpike. It's where Anderson Builders is today. And they went there, and that was the first fire it was on. Now, there was a good fire, there was a good spot because the stream's right there, so they could draft. I'm, I guess, lucky enough that I could talk to some of the old timers that were still some of the charter members that were around and hear them talk. And they talked about one call. It was over on the Silver Valley Road, which of course goes off 209 there from Cresgeville to Kunkletown. And they got the call one night, so they all loaded in the Buffalo and went and got to the house. Well, there was no water around, so what they did was they pulled the hose off and put it in gear and used the 200 gallons. When it was gone, they'd unhook the hose, take the Buffalo, drive to the nearest water source, fill the Buffalo back up, drive back to the fire, rehook everything up, and repeat that until they got to the point that they could overcome the fire.
So can you just use anyone's pond or stream? Do you have to have permission, or can you just?
Well, in the Commonwealth, being we're a Commonwealth, if you look at the laws of the Commonwealth, all the water belongs to the Commonwealth in the state. From what I understand, even if you had a private well, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania could put a meter on it and charge you for the water because they own all the water. So it's pretty much, we can use almost anything. As far as static water sources, you don't go after swimming pools and stuff because they're
natural water sources.
Yeah, they're a pain in the butt to try.
I can't imagine anyone really be complaining if.
No,
exactly, of your neighbors, yeah.
Right, and it's your neighbor, and would you want to be in, have the fire chief going, well, so-and-so didn't want us to use the pond there. You wouldn't have that on the local news, so. And that's how things went. How times have changed, I know that back then they had gotten some coats and helmets with the Buffalo, but then in the minutes they said they ordered some more. A coat and a helmet back then cost $8.75. Today, to buy a new set of bunker gear, which is pants and coats, and then interior boots, structural gloves, a hood, a helmet, and an SCBA is about $8,232. So
I want to ask you later, you're in a net, but how do fire companies earn that? Where do they get the money? If we can answer it now if you want, or we can.
Well, the thing is that you either do a lot of fundraising or you have a very good relationship with your municipality, which we do, which we work very hard with our municipality to do it. We get them to put a fire tax on, which we get so much of the millage every year. because like I said, the Buffalo cost $4,950. The last fire truck we bought, the last engine we bought was $749,000 or some figure like that, and that's just a engine. Like our ladder was $700,000 in 2016. It would be well over $1 million now to replace it.
So back then, if somebody's house was on fire, how would they inform you guys?
Well, the thing is that they actually rigged up a system, a telephone system, and Harold Rodenbach, which is Claude Rodenbach's father, built a siren. And they had it set up on the old firehouse that they could call it in. When the phone was, the switchboard operator there in Broadsville would give so many rings and it could trip the siren, or they'd call to the Rodenbach garage and have them trip the siren. That's not the siren we still use. It's that siren actually went and was put on the Effort Diner. So for many years, if you ever went to the Effort Diner, you noticed on a pole there was a big red fire siren on it. Well, what would happen then was that was probably in the 50s. They'd go ahead and call the diner and they'd press the button and the siren would run. We tried to get it back before they tore the diner down, but we weren't able to con them out of it, so it went. So basically, and that was the main way that you were called until into the I'd just say into the 80s, when the Plectron and things like that started to come out, which a Plectron is a big box about this size of paper and about that thick, and when it went off, you didn't sleep through it. It woke everybody in the house. So my wife knows, she ran an ambulance. So that's what I started with, and of course then 2 pagers, and which we still use, and even now we get text alerts on our phones that we have a call.
So getting back to the early days, you had this truck, the Buffalo. When did they get the second truck?
So the second truck, now in 1953, they built, which is where we are currently in. They bought some property from Ames Altamose, and they built a 2-story station there. Which, if you look at our building, you can see the original 2-story part, and there's 2 small bays and 3 large ones. So the 2 small ones are the 2 original parts, with a hall upstairs, and the new station. The main station was dedicated on April 11th, 1953. Sometime, and we don't know when, I've never been able to get a definitive answer, the company went and bought a 1938 International KB fuel truck from Parker Brothers here in Stroudsburg to use that as a tanker. There's no pictures of that we found, or nobody has one. All the old timers would say it had vacuum assisted brakes and didn't stop real well. So that joined the Buffalo there at the firehouse. It wasn't until 1957 that they actually bought another fire truck. They went to, and I'm going to say that it was purchased through Rodenbach's, because of course they were the Dodge dealer there in town. And so it was a Dodge chassis with a Howe body. Now Howe fire equipment was out of Anderson, Indiana. And we figured that was sometime around then they had to build the 3 larger bays onto the firehouse, because that would never fit into the small bays. So it wasn't until 57 when they bought the next piece of apparatus, which I call a monitored pumper. It was a midship pumper, which means the pump wasn't mounted on the front. It was mounted in the middle, like most of them are, right behind the cab with a 500-gallon water tank.
So for 25 years, if I'm doing the math right,
Yes, they had used the Buffalo strictly. And after that, the Buffalo was still in use. It wasn't taken away. So they had that one so used the Buffalo and the 57 Dodge, and of course this International KB. Sometime then through Army surplus, they were able to get a 42 Rio, which they picked up down it was at a Westinghouse plant down in Baltimore, Maryland. My Uncle Charles had actually went down to go pick this thing up, and it was just a military flatbed. They brought that back, took the flatbed off, and they took the tank off the 38 and put that on to the military truck. Again, we had a lot of handy people in the fire department. When the Buffalo was delivered in 32, it didn't have a windshield, which they complained about. So again, Harold Rodenbach put a windshield on the Buffalo. Irv Altimos, again, one of the mechanics, it had manual brakes. He put a hydraulic brake system on it. With the Rio, Harold Altimos and Clayton Featherman built a roof on it. It had a canvas roof, so they built a metal roof for it and did all the tank, put the tank on and put a pump on it, a portable pump to pump the water off to use as a tanker. And that was the fleet until 1968. Now in 68, again, they went back through Rodenbach's and bought another truck from Howe on a Dodge chassis, four-wheel drive pumper. Now this one had a front mount pump. So in the fire department, even when I was joined in 1987, they were both still there, the two. So you had the old Dodge, which was the 57, and the new Dodge, which was the 68. So that's how they determined which one was that. Believe it or not, the last call the Buffalo went to was in 1968, right when the new Dodge was purchased. So it went to then, and it like I said, even when the other two newer ones had showed up, it still had a use. Dad remembers it came in here to Stroudsburg when Agnes hit. He used to use it to my dad used to take it and fill the swimming pool in Effort, which was right across from, well, it was the Effort Hotel, but it's a Morgan Coffee Roasters. Across the street there used to be a swimming pool. And Dad would take the Buffalo up every summer and fill that up with the Buffalo. He says he remembers doing that from the stream there. And then, like I said, in 68, then it was finally retired from active use. And the good thing was we kept it. So,
is it on display or just for parades?
It is. It's there in the firehouse if somebody wants to see it. I mean, we'll show it to you. Our goal, I'd love to have it restored and repainted. It's the wrong color. It's fire engine red, and it should be. There's traces of it. If you know where to look in the back compartment, there's a little compartment in the back, and under the dashboard, it should be. We always call American La France red. It's almost a maroon. It's almost like a dried blood red, and it was originally gold. It had gold leaf on the fenders and on the hood. And it said West End, of course, on the hood. And then on the sides, above the suction hose, it said Chestnuthill and then Polk Township on the side. So, I mean, we'd love to have it. It's a mechanically, like I said, it runs, it pumps. But it's the wrong color.
So when did you join? How old were you when you joined?
I joined as a junior. I was 16 when I joined. The junior in Pennsylvania, you have junior firemen. You can have a junior program that's younger than 16, but there's a lot of restrictions. So most departments wait till you can drive, and then.
So were there things you weren't allowed to do?
So we couldn't do interior firefighting or anything like that. We could help out on the outside, pull hose and help change air pack bottles, cylinders, and do things like that. Help with brush fires, and help clean up afterwards and pack everything back up. So we that's basically how you started doing stuff and taking your training classes.
And your dad was a member of this?
Yes. Well, Dad wasn't active at that time. He had done his 20 years. When you hit 20 years, you're considered a life member, and then we do have a big bunch that are life members now that we're all active. Back then, it seemed more when you hit your 20 years, a lot of people left the department and stuff. So, but and then we came through it. Like I said, when I was there, we had all the everything was there. Like I said, the International was gone, but the Rio tanker was there. In 1969, they bought a pickup truck, which we still use as a brush truck even today, and a Chevy. They got a Chevy chassis, and we purchased the stainless steel milk body. They had that made into a tanker, which was kind of a monster. It was originally done by Hal. Hal had mounted to put a front mount pump on it and the original body on it. Sometime we had it refurbished. That was right before I came in. That was done by Carmar, which later became KME Fire Apparatus which was in Nesquehoning. That was there, and then in '87, like I said, when I joined, the '57 Dodge was there, but they had just ordered a mini pumper from Pierce Manufacturing out in Appleton, Wisconsin, and that came in. They were using the '57 Dodge to be a rescue truck, and the new mini pumper was coming to replace it because it was, it was a 1957, so it was getting kind of old. And that's when I came in. In 1987, we didn't have jaws. We didn't have the jaws of life back then, so we were. If we needed the jaws on accidents, which happened a lot of times, we either called in Blue Ridge Hook and Ladder from Saylorsburg or Polk Township to come with jaws. That was a problem too with accidents and stuff before the jaws. Again, and going back to Claude Rodenbach, when they had bad ones when he was running, he'd come out with a station wrecker, and he had kind of made a device to pull doors off of cars with a wrecker to get people out when they had accidents and stuff like that. So again, like I said, a lot of smart people in the department. So then shortly after that, we did get a small set of jaws. So we started with that. I like to tell the young guys I'm old enough to remember stuff that they don't when we do extrication, using hacksaws and lawnmower blades and sawzalls and stuff, and porta-powers, which is a hand-operated hydraulic set to get people out of cars, and sandbags. And back when, of course, we only had one medic unit and one helicopter for the whole thing. You had Medic 7, and you had medevac coming out of Lehigh Valley, and I always kid them. When we have a bad call, I said, "Yeah, you should have been in the old days." I said, on a good day, I said, you got one or the other. I said, you got medevac or you got the medics. I said, on a great day, you got them both. And I said, most days you got none, because they call in for them and say, Medic 7 is, up in Coolball Township, and medevac's on another call. So you really had to improvise, and God forbid if you called them and didn't need them, well, you got in trouble with that.
You must have seen over the course of your time lots of unpleasant things. accidents and house fires and families grieving. And
Yes, you do. I mean, it's not pleasant at times. I mean, but you have your good moments then too. I'll bring it up. My wife won't like this because she was on the ambulance that day. We had gotten, it was a secondary call. We had gotten called over to the Lower Smith Gap Road, which was, it was strange. That's in, it was actually in not our area. It was in Kunkletown's area. And at that particular time, Polk's Jaws of Life were out of service, and and Sailorsburg's Jaws of Life were out of service. So we were it. So we go crossed and over to the Lower Smith Gap Road, and there was a car that was wrapped around a tree. And when I say wrapped around, the front and the rear of the car were touching.
oh my God.
And what had happened was the driver was actually, if you can picture it, a sandwich. So you have the passenger side against the tree, the driver, and then the driver's side. He was actually sandwiched in there. And so we went to work on this. Medevac, of course, was called. And then that was back then. Of course, there was only one medevac. We had no. It had to be bad. We were always told in training, though, that to say, well, it has to be bad if medevac would fly blood. Well, medevac landed, and the flight medics and stuff got there, and we're still trying to get this guy out. And this is, I mean, because the car was wrecked, it tried to catch on fire a couple times, and we kept working at him. And they took off and went to, I think, Lehighton Hospital to pick up blood. So they're all listening to this on the radio. And the next thing they tell you in medevac class is it has to be really bad if they'll take the helicopter, go back and pick the trauma surgeon up to come out to the call. They drop the blood off. Flight crew goes back, gets in the helicopter, takes off. We're going to the trauma surgeon to get the trauma surgeon, because if you can't get this guy out by the time we get back, we're going to amputate his legs on the scene.
Was this guy conscious?
Yes, I think he was semi-conscious at the
What
time,
you guys said, yeah.
from what they said. Now, of course, my wife does this.
Get to make it.
She ran ambulance, and of course they would have been there, but they had a frequent flyer call of one of the local psych patients. So they're listening to all this as this is going on, thinking, you know, because this is, again, something you don't see. So we're working on them. We came up with an idea of using the tree and the jaws together, and the helicopter's landing with the trauma surgeon, and we were able to radio him, hey, we got this guy out. So we got the guy out, we packaged him up, threw him into the helicopter. 2 years later, I'm sitting at our carnival. We still had carnival every year. I'm sitting at the front and talking to someone, and this gentleman comes up. He's limping up. And he asked me, he says, are you so-and-so? I said, yes. And he says, do you remember the call on the Sailorsburg Kunkletown Road? I said, yes, I do. He says, well, I'm the guy in the car. He says, I just wanted to thank you. So like I said, that's, you know, it's one of the good times, you know, even though you see a lot of bad stuff every once in a while, something like that happens, it makes you feel, you know, real good that, you know, here's this guy, he's walking around with both his legs because he didn't get him amputated in the car.
Wow.
So.
And in the early days, you know, I mean, it's obviously physically and emotionally taxing, and you just did the job. And here are these 75 charter members that just
Yeah.
decided the community needed this, and we're just everyday people, and we're going to go fight fires and help.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting when you really start to think about it.
Has over the course of your time there, has volunteerism, has it become a problem? Are you getting enough members?
We have a good,
Fortunate.
we're fortunate that we have a good group. What we see is more people that come in usually are past volunteers that have moved into the area that want to continue, because it's hard. I mean, if you were 18 years old and you joined a department today, essentials is 200 and some hours of training for essentials of firefighting. It was 68 hours when I joined in 1987. I always, people that come in like that, I always tell them, look, it's going to be at least 2 years before we can kind of use you till you get up to speed on everything you need to know, especially in the structural firefighting end. I mean, it's really changed. I mean, back in 1932, everything was wood in the houses, everything was, or natural materials. In 2022, everything's plastic. It burns a lot hotter, it burns a lot faster, it makes a lot more toxic stuff. I mean, like I said, the cost of gear, it's, instead of turnout gear without the air, take the $4,000 off for the air pack. So you're looking at $4,000 of equipment. That $4,000 equipment is good for 10 years. It has a mandatory, NFPA says in 10 years, you can no longer use it for structural firefighting. I mean, and that changed since when I first joined. You got turnout gear, it lasted forever, but then now by that time it's degraded so much that the protection's gone. So, we always say it's the most expensive suit of clothes you'll ever get, $400 a year for 10 years, and it's done. And after that, we can ship it to a third world country or someplace like that, which we've done and stuff. But they're glad to have it because they got nothing. So it's really changed. Cars.
How many members do you have now?
Right now, active, we have about 35. So that's been right around where we've been since I joined, 35, 40. We've never had the problem. Some departments have had waiting lists and things like that in the past, which we never had.
Waiting lists because people want to get on?
They wanted to join, yeah. I mean, I know some departments had so many people wanting to join, they had waiting lists, and then now that's a thing of the past. Nobody has that anymore. But yeah, it's changed. I mean, and part of what helps again is a good relationship with the municipality. So you don't, it's tough. It's tough to say a guy that you have to take all this mandatory training. We have mandatory training we have to take every year. We have to take bloodborne pathogens. We have to refresh in hazardous materials operations, CPR every year, and we make all our drivers requalify every year and make sure everybody knows, requalify on the JAWS and all this stuff, and then say, hey, you have to not only do all that and go to fires, but also come down and sling, chickens and work carnival and all that kind of stuff afterwards. So,
does your group go into schools to work with children about, not being afraid of?
Yes, I mean, every year during fire prevention year now, of course, the last 2 years with COVID, we haven't been in the schools. I mean, they brought them out and showed them the trucks and stuff, and we've done stuff outside. But yes, we do that. The fire department's going to the night of Unity now here at the high school, which is Monday. Again, that's kind of try to recruit some new members and stuff, like some new juniors and stuff out of the high school, because they are a source. I mean, for somebody with no knowledge and stuff, that's, a lot of ways that we have people stay is through, they came into the junior program and, you lose them. Maybe you lose them when they go to college or something like that. One or two of them work and, stay in the department and stuff, but sometimes, and they come back sometimes after they're, graduated and stuff. So.
What's a typical week or month like? I mean, do you have monthly meetings?
So
training?
Tuesday night's drill night. So the first, third, and fourth or fifth, how many ever Tuesdays are in the month. So yeah, the first, third, and fourth Tuesday are drill. The second Tuesday is business meeting. And every Thursday night is truck night, which they go from station to station and do a PM on all the apparatus. They'll go through, check the oil, start all the chainsaws, check all the lights and everything.
PM is something maintenance.
Periodic maintenance.
Periodic
I mean, we don't change oil and stuff in the trucks. We have our dealer comes and does that because you're changing oil in a diesel engine. It's you're not talking quarts, you're talking gallons, and they show up with a little box truck full of 55-gallon drums of oil and transmission fluid and take care of all that for us once a year.
So you have something every week.
Yes.
That's not counting fires.
And that's not counting fires. You can have, you'll have a week when you have one or two. Usually a month, it works out to about one a day. But that's, you've had
one a day. I'm sorry, I missed something.
one call a day.
Really?
It works out that day. And some days you'll have, none. Some days you have 2 or 3. Some days, I think actual calls that wasn't weather related, like, weather related calls, you just run from tree to tree or, things like that. But I think for actual calls, I think the most we had was 7.
In one day?
In one day. We were married, and I think I left at 9 o'clock in the morning, and I didn't come home till 10 or 11 o'clock at night. We just ran from one end of the township to the other and into other townships. I don't know if it was brush fire season or not, but it was busy. That was a busy day.
Now you're self-employed, right?
Yes.
But what about guys that have jobs?
So that's daytimes are tough. So in the daytime, it's the self-employed guys like me. If some of the guys that work for the township are also in the fire department, so if it's big, they'll come off. They work on the road crew, they'll come. It's tough. People with jobs. The state does have a law that if they're out on a call before they're scheduled to go to work and they're late because of it, you can't fire them for volunteering. That's at least if they work in Pennsylvania. Now in other states that our law might not hold, but it is on the books, and it's been tested, I know, and it's held up in court. So, but it's tough. It's, daytime, today it takes, years past when more people worked in the area, you get away with 2-3 companies for a daytime fire. Now you're talking minimum of 4, maybe 5 companies to get enough people there to handle it.
So there must be a lot of cooperation between the various.
Yes, we have good cooperation between the departments. I always have. Nobody was ever, real confrontational with each other out there. Or in some areas, you had thread wars. See, in the fire service, there's the couplings and the hoses and everything are all threaded. And back in the day, of course, there was what's called NST, National Standard Thread, which is what most everybody uses today. But then if you had departments that didn't like each other, you could order your own special hose with your own special thread. You call it bastard thread. That's just what it's called. So if you didn't like your neighbor, and they come to your call, well, they couldn't hook up to your hydrants or your trucks or anything like that because you had this odd thread, and they had to carry adapters and things like that. So, which is how you screwed with your neighbors. If you didn't like each other, which I know happened in a lot of towns with that had 3, 4, 5 little fire departments all in one area. So, but no, we get along well with all our neighboring departments, and the cooperation there, because we know we need each other.
So is there always somebody at the station?
No.
So what happens if there's a fire? They call the station.
So they call 911.
They call 911.
Yeah.
Of course, it goes to control center, and then they'll hit our tones. They
What does
tone
that
it.
what does that mean?
Well, the way the radio pagers work is that over the radio system, they send on it's a set of tones. If you ever listen to the scanner, you'll hear it, and it sets the tones off, and that'll trip the pager, which of course the pager then alerts, and then
And everybody gets a page then.
everybody gets a page. Now everybody gets a text. Back when I started, of course, you'd have 2 sets of tones. You'd have first would be the ones to trip your pagers, and then you'd have another set. I mean, they still do, but ours is turned off. The second set, it trips your siren. The siren has its own. When I started, it was hooked up to a plectron, and then it was hooked up to a pager. It's still hooked up to a pager, but we don't run it because our siren is a World War II air surplus air raid siren, and it has a 10 horsepower 3-phase motor. So it really, it works, but we turn it on once a year to scare the bees out of it. But but back when I was joined, that was one of the main ways to alert people, because you'd have people that worked outside jobs and stuff, and I know that if you're mowing your grass or you're doing something like that, you can't hear the pager go off, even though how loud it is and stuff. So, but you'd hear the house siren. And a lot of companies still use them. I know Polk still use it. We can hear Polk's at our house, and Blue Ridge is on good night. The wind's blowing in the right direction. We can hear theirs and stuff, but it's not the main way of knowing. But so yeah, when it goes off, then you drop what you're doing, and if you can, and drive to the firehouse. And
do you like call, like, let's say the fire goes off and I live 15 or 10 miles away, and I'm not going to get there, but maybe everybody else is there. Do they take off without me, or do you call?
Well, they will. Yeah. So what we have now, and again, it goes. See, times are changing. Back in the back days, yeah, we just once the truck was full, it left. Now we have a little app. It's called I Am Responding, and you go on there and you tell them where you're coming. So you hit that, you go on the app, you can say, I'm going to Broadsville, and I'll be there and it gives you an option. I'll be there within 5 minutes, I'll be there in over 5 minutes. You say you go to the scene, you say you're going to our Manafort substation, which same thing, and you'll be there within 5 minutes or more than 5 minutes, and so we kind of have an idea we have an idea who's coming. So it is nice.
So other than the accident that you described with the tree, were there any big things that you remember fighting fires, or specific?
Mike's Pizza.
Oh yeah, Mike's Pizza was. It wasn't actually Mike's. Well, that's where the building was. Everybody called it Mike's Pizza, but it's actually in the Chocolatiers on Thanksgiving Day. So it was on Thanksgiving Day, and geez, what was that, 11, 12 years ago now? We got called for a structure fire there. We lived fairly close, and we looked out, and I could see the header from our house. And I was assistant chief at the time, so I drove over and did a quick size up, and it was, it was well involved in Chocolatiers and stuff. So first apparatus get there, and again, it's Thanksgiving, and we called in a lot of the neighboring companies, of course, because of the day. Some people were home, but some people were away. Got everything set up. They again, good location. because we could lay 5-inch hose from War Lake up to the scene, so we had a lot of water. We didn't have to worry about tankers and stuff. I took the attack crew in because, you know, I'm one of the most experienced guys, so we went into Chocolatiers and started in there. And that was, it was in 2016 because we had the new engine, we had the ladder, and we were in there. So we went in and I was in the kitchen. Other crews went into the Chinese restaurant, which was next door, into Mike's Pizza. So we're in there, you know, fighting the fire. I'm making pretty good progress. Our new truck had compressed air foam on, so I'm using that and knocking the fire down. And all of a sudden, the rest of the drop ceiling drops down, and we kind of heard something, and I turned to the guy behind me and screamed at him, "What was that?" And the next thing that happened was that all the air horns on the scene started going off. Now, when all the air horns on the scene go off, that's the universal signal, get out the building. That's the evacuation signal. All air horns go off. Everybody hits the air horns, means get out. So we came out, they're pulling me out, and I'm disentangling myself from wires from the ceiling. And I got out, and we came out of the building, and I'm looking there, and there's guys laying on the ground, and the doors from the Chinese restaurant and the door from the Mike's Pizza are laying in the parking lot. And there's glass all over, and the fire's raging. I'm going, geez, what the heck happened? So we go back and fight the fire and stuff. And one of my friends, he was chief at the time, and he came down. He was still in the department, but he didn't have his gear, so he took video. He was also an arson investigator for the state of New Jersey. And afterwards, he showed us the video. So what had happened was that we didn't know. It's bad to say we didn't know that they're building in our area. That the original building, of course, was where Mike's Pizza was in the Chinese restaurant, and there was a basement underneath that part. But where the Chocolatiers was on a slab. Port slab, because that was a later addition. So what had happened was that, of course, the unburned products of combustion and everything that you get during your regular fire, well, it all built up in this basement because the stairway to the basement was actually in the Chocolatier store in the kitchen area. But there was a masonry wall there around the steps. So it went on, and what happened was we got a backdraft. So Chris showed us the video he took. He was sitting back in Kinsley's parking lot, so Kinsley's was the store then. So what happened was you see the backside of the fire from the Chocolatier side. You actually see the water stream, which I was on the nozzle, and he got the minute of when the backdraft happened. At the minute backdraft happened, the whole building actually lifted up off the foundation and came back down. The people that were in the Chinese restaurant and Mike's Pizza, one fireman, Lonnie, and Lonnie's a big guy, 275 pounds. He was thrown up across the counter. Other guys were knocked around. It blew the doors off the building, and the Mike's Pizza and the Chinese restaurant part. We were behind, like I said, shielded by this masonry wall. So we didn't, my crew didn't really know what happened until we got outside. So that one was bad. That later determined to be arson, which was never prosecuted. But that was neat. Lisa will say the one too, was a house on Greenview Drive. It was an old house, and we got a call for a structure fire there, and it was dark, and we drove up on, I don't know if I don't know if I was a chief or assistant or whatever, but and of course it was before cell phones, so we drove up, and it was a 2-story house, and the entire house was outlined. Every window was on fire, but not like you see flames blowing out. There was some, but at the bottom of every piece of wood siding, the bottom of the trim and everything and stuff was all on fire. The house looked like it was made out of fire. It was probably the coolest thing I ever saw in my time, you know. And I always said, you know, oh, if it just been today and I could have had a photo, you know, I could have took pictures of it. When Country Junction burned, we were there. That you could see from Broadsville. You could see the glow in the sky from Broadsville.
So I'm just thinking, here it is Thanksgiving Day and you've made a great dinner or whatever, right?
Yes.
And everybody all gets this call, they have to just leave.
We left.
And they go out and risk their lives, literally.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, it's happened Christmas Eve, Christmas Day. We've had calls, and a lot of times, you know, holiday calls. A lot of times, thank goodness they're dumb stuff. You know, I burnt my turkey or
Rescue cats.
things like that. So you know, it's not super bad, but it happens. Birthdays. I mean, was on my birthday one year, and we had a big structure fire, and that ended up being arson, and it was forever till I got home. So that kind of killed the birthday plans. But
wow, well, you've told us a lot of fascinating stuff. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about that we haven't talked about yet?
Yeah, no, I mean, like I said, it's changed so much.
What do you see the future of the volunteer fire departments?
Well, I think you're going to see in the future, I think you'll see a lot of mergers and more, of things, more mutual aid between departments. And I think you're going to, again, and all this goes back to the stuff, some of the older stuff. I think you're going to see more of, in some things like not only standardization of equipment. Like right now, we started it. We went when we changed when we had to change air packs. Because again, they come to you every once in a while and say, oh, your old ones are no good no more, so you had to buy all new ones. So when we changed air packs, we went with a company called Draeger. Now Draeger is from Germany, and but they make a really good air pack. We went with them, our neighboring companies, Polk and Blue Ridge, were so impressed that they went with them too. So now we all have the same model air pack and stuff. So that really makes, the interchangeability, it's nothing for one of our guys to go and grab one of their packs and know all about how to, use it, and vice versa. We have it that if we're called, somebody's out in Polk or one of Polk's guys is us, we'll let them ride on our apparatus and stuff like that to the fire, because back when I started, that was unheard of. You would never let nobody do that. But we're all going to the same place, and
do you think there'll ever be a county-wide?
It's possible. I mean, I see the trend going to I think first we paid on call, where you'll actually have people that are paid, when you get a call, you're paid to go, and things like that. Countywide department, yeah, or regionals. I always joke that you know, us in Coupletown and Polk could reform as West End Regional Fire Department. You know, and we see a lot of that now, like, too, there's more thinking about that now in the fire service. In our area, in Chestnuthill, we have a ladder because we have an aerial device because we have the need for it. You know, we have Kinsley's and we have most of the schools. So we need it. Yes, Polk has some of the schools and stuff, but do they need an aerial ladder? No. So it's better for us, you know, they see that as a need where, you know, they don't need to buy one because we have one. So why, you know, go spend $1 million, you know, just to say, hey, we have this, and things like that. So, and I think you're going to see, you know, more of that in the future. I think, you know, people getting together and go, hey, you know, everybody doesn't need a heavy rescue and things like that. You know, you could have a light, you can have a light, you know, we'll have the heavy or, you know, stuff like that. I mean, like for us now, we have a heavy because, you know, auto accidents are still unfortunately one of our big calls because people drive crazy. You know, and selling insurance, I can tell you. Monroe County's insurance rates are at least 15% higher than, say, Carbon County's insurance rates. And that's because of the accident. It's partly because of the accident rates here in the county.
But you're optimistic, generally speaking, about the fire department.
Yes, I mean it's it's something that's not going to go away. You know, technology's improving, you know, all the time. You know.
But I would think the hardest thing is getting the people willing to give up their Thanksgiving dinners to go out and risk their lives.
It is. That's the biggest thing, is getting people to volunteer. I mean, it's a big commitment, you know. And like I said, we've got a lot of people there that, you know, the number of people with 5, you know, and 10, well, from 5 years up, you know, goes more. And, you know, I'm now in the older group. I got 37 years in, and there's a bunch of us, you know, that are at that point now too. You know, I always say, you know, my days of, you know, I'm 53 years old. My days of going into structure fires are starting to get over because, you know, when you're 18, you go in a fire and you get up and go to work the next day. I'm 53. I go in and go in a fire and I hurt for 2 weeks afterwards. You know, it's a visit to the chiropractor and you know, until I recover and stuff. You know, so.
Well, Eric, are there any other questions that we should have asked, or is there anything else that you wanted to talk about?
No, I mean, like I said, I gave you the early history of the company. I can tell you we built our substation in Effort in right around 1989. In 1990 was when that was built, and that was of course the, you know, the housing and stuff in that area had gone. So I'll leave you with something. Do you know how Effort got its name? The town of Effort. You do. You know how. So the town of Effort, of course, got its name because we made the citizens wanted a post office, and they said we're going to make one last effort to get a post office, and that's how the town of Effort got its name.
Great note to end on. Great story to end on. Well, thanks very much, Eric.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have any final
Well,
questions?
just thank you, and thank you not only for doing this, but thank you for your service and
Yeah,
all the
sure.
emergency services personnel. I mean,
Yeah.
you guys are so important and such a vital part of our communities. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. So, and I'm sure you have my. If you don't, I'll bring you a set. I'll bring you most of what I. You have my grandfather's books, Henry Hoffman. You have Broadsville and the Days of Yore, and probably. Do you have the Turnpike book? The East and Wilkes-Barre Turnpike. That one was the last one he did, so I don't know if you don't, let me know, and I will give you a copy, because he did he found some minutes and stuff from the Turnpike Company and did that, and
That'd be wonderful to have for our collection. Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks again.
You're welcome.